Hello everyone. We're Open Doors Metropolitan Community Church in Seoul, Korea, and this is our YouTube channel. We're a community seeking to live out the radically inclusive love of Jesus the Christ. We are a faith community of the Progressive Christian Alliance and an emerging church of metropolitan community churches. Please join us now for excerpts from the service held on Sunday, August 14th, 2016. The 13th Sunday after Pentecost. The theme of the service is diversity or division, and the preacher is the Reverend Craig Bartlett.
Within the coming of your way, O Jesus, we find the stirring of the soul. In this encounter, our bellies churn and fire is cast upon the ground. The fire which transforms life into the grace you bring. Begin in us the moment you would bring to fruition. Amen. Okay, the first reading comes from the book of the prophet Jeremiah, beginning at the 23rd chapter, beginning to read at the 23rd verse. We have two people with us today, so please feel free to read in whatever language you prefer.
내가 가까운 곳에 하나님이며 먼 곳에 하나님은 아닌 줄 아느냐? 나 주의 말이다. 사람이 제 아무리 은밀한 곳에 숨는다고 하여도 그는 내 눈에서 벗어날 수 없다. 나 주의 말이다. 내가 하늘과 땅 어디에나 있는 줄을 모르느냐? 나의 이름을 팔아 거짓으로 예언하는 예언자들이 있다. 내가 꿈에 보았다. 내가 꿈의 계시를 받았다 하고 주장하는 말을 내가 들었다. 이 예언자들이 언제까지 거짓으로 예언하겠으며 언제까지 자기들의 마음속에서 꾸며낸 환상으로 거짓을 예언하겠느냐. 그들은 조상이 바알을 섬기며 내 이름을 잊었듯이 서로 꿈 이야기를 주고받으면서 내 백성이 내 이름을 잊어버리도록 약을 꾸미고 있다. 꿈을 꾼 예언자가 꿈 이야기를 하더라도 내 말을 받은 예언자는 충실하게 내 말만 전하여라. 알곡과 쭉정이가 서로 무슨 상관이 있느냐? 나 주의 말이다. 꿈을 꾼 예언자가 꿈 이야기를 하더라도 내 말을 받은 예언자는 충실하게 내 말만 전하여라. 알곡과 쭉정이가 서로 무슨 상관이 있겠느냐? 나 주의 말이다.
The Gospel reading comes from the Gospel according to Luke chapter 12, beginning to read at the 49th verse. Jesus speaks. I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what stress I am under until it is completed. Do you think that I have come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, 5 in one household will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. They will be divided. Father against son and son against father, mother against daughter and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. He also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, you immediately say, it is going to rain. And so it happens. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say, there will be scorching heat. And it happens. You hypocrites! You know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time? Thanks be to God. As I alluded to in my Facebook posting for this service, these are hardly shiny, happy people, we are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord types of readings, aren't they? And they won't satisfy those who are looking for happiness and light today. In fact, I remember one time when I was in China at University of Ningbo, Nottingham, Ningbo, China. I was asked to take part in a students' concert that time, and I sang the song Sonny's Dream, which was by Ron Hines, a famous Newfoundland singer-songwriter who died just, I think, late last year or early this year. Anyway, the thing about it was that the song is about a boy who's separated from his father and thinks about him all the time, and the father thinks about the son, and they're separated by distance, etc. And I got criticized by someone for not singing happy songs. There are such people type in the world. But I know the fact is people can easily say there's enough division in the world. There's the 1% versus the other 99%. There's enmity between religions, disagreements within religions, even within denominations. Why else do we have more than 90 different Presbyterian denominations in Korea? It's true. It's true. And God knows we've seen more than enough divisiveness in this most recent election season, both within Korea and within the United States. Well, the fact is, divisiveness is part and parcel of the human experience. And the way of faith is not a solution to that. In fact, sometimes it is little more than one more source of division. And the way of faith will always have its detractors. We've heard from the prophet Jeremiah today. We're going to hear from different parts of the book of Jeremiah throughout the autumn. Just to give you a summary of the book of Jeremiah. The roots of this book, of course, are within the activity of the prophet who began his work during the reign of King Josiah. And King Josiah initiated major reforms within the southern kingdom of Judah to try and encourage more exclusive faithfulness to Yahweh. And he was also active, Jeremiah was, during the reigns of the last two kings of Judah, whose activities eventually led to the sacking of Jerusalem by the Babylonians and to the hauling off of their best and brightest, so to speak, into exile. Now, there are definite signs within the book that it has been redacted, edited, so to speak, over the centuries, and some of those redactions show evidence of coming from the era when Cyrus of Persia allowed that remnant of Judah living in Babylon to return and to resettle the land. Nonetheless, we can be very confident that much of the book has its roots in the activity of the prophet. Now, Jeremiah spoke at a time when there were a lot of seers who were willing to forecast what we might call sunshine and rainbows. But Jeremiah could clearly see storm clouds on the horizon. He could see how precarious Judah's position was within the geopolitical game that's being played in the region at that time. And he decided he would not stay silent. And this meant going up against those who were all too willing to speak a message which would have been more popular. So he has to draw a clear distinction between those who proclaim dreams, which I'm sure he would call vacuous and insipid and empty, and those who speak a clear word from God. Between those whose proclamations are as nourishing as straw, and the Word of God which truly nourishes like grain. Kind of reminds me of one time when I was doing my certificate course to become a teacher before I came over to Korea. We had a teacher from Japan, and they were talking about instant ramen in Japan there, and she basically said, "Oh, don't try and make your meals out of ramen. They basically have the nutritional value of cardboard." So think of it as the difference between, if we're thinking about between straw and grain, the difference between packaged ramen and a dish of real noodles like kalguksu or something like that. And then, of course, we have the words of Jesus today, which really don't give much more comfort. I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. Now, this fire is meant to cleanse. We can think of it like the refiner's fire. The images of the refiner's fire in the Advent readings, which we heard from many, many months ago. But in the meantime, we know that this fire will cause division, even to the point of bringing division within households, between generations, between genders. And we all know too well, how division has, more often than not, been the hallmark, the shameful hallmark of Christian history. Battle lines have been drawn between Christians and between Christian groups on esoteric points of theology. One of the earliest ones was the Council of Nicaea, where the difference of one letter made the biggest difference was made into the biggest difference between what the true nature of Jesus was. You think about the Nicene Creed, of one substance with the Father, as opposed to of a similar substance with the Father. In the original Greek, it was, are we going to say homoousios, or are we going to say homoiousios? One letter. And then, who has ultimate authority has often been a major dividing point. The first division between the Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholics. It basically came down to whether all Christians would agree that Rome's place of jurisdiction in the Christian church was a primacy of authority, or as a primacy of honor. Is Rome the first among equals, as the Eastern Orthodox even are willing to say today? Or is it first authority and ultimate authority, as those who followed the way of Rome ultimately say? I mean, I remember reading in undergrad this book about Eastern Orthodoxy, written by a famous priest who later became Bishop, Timothy Ware. His Greek name is Kallistos, and he wrote, all of the Orthodox churches would be willing to let Rome have the seat of the seat of the presidency of an ecumenical council, but they would not say, they are unwilling to say, that Rome has the final say in all matters, the Bishop of Rome. And that was one of the final dividing lines, the earliest split within Christianity. And then, of course, there was the Protestant Reformation. You know, does the individual have the right to interpret Scripture for him or herself? And then later on, there were disputes over slavery, of course, which were played out within the churches in the United States, on gender and the right to lead the Christian community, and on sexuality and who has the right to be in the Christian community, let alone lead it. And in one congregation, which a mentor minister of mine once served, the division in that congregation was as to whether the choir in that congregation should purchase and wear robes. The issue divided this congregation so much that one member jumped up during a congregational meeting and yelled, "Satan's got a hold of this church!" As we've often heard it said, there's no fight like a church fight. So what is the antidote to this? Well, as an example of the antidote to this, I would hold up the experience of the millennial Christian blogger and writer Rachel Held Evans. She was raised in Dayton, Tennessee. Now, Dayton, Tennessee, if you don't know, was the home of the infamous Scopes monkey trial. And it pitted the modernist movement, which accepted evolution, against fundamentalism, which rejected evolution in favor of creationism. As you may know, in the United States, that debate is still alive and well today. In fact, a few years ago in Korea, there was a concerted effort by certain Christian groups to have creationism, intelligent design, whatever the hell you want to call it, to have it taught in public schools as a rival theory equal to evolution. That has happened in this country, and we should not forget that. Well, since the days of the Scopes monkey trial, Dayton has continued to hold its heritage as a very conservative Christian city, and it's in this environment that Rachel Held Evans was raised. She went to church, she evangelized and witnessed whenever she could, she worked hard to get her school prizes for best Christian attitude, she went to the heaven and hell nights that they would have on the Sunday before Halloween, when they'd have the basement of the church decorated as hell, complete with Satan and all those minions and that, and then heaven up in the sanctuary and that. Kind of like a mini divine comedy, you know, with no purgatory. And she also went to the Right Christians College, which in that town was named Bryan College, after William Jennings Bryan, the lawyer who argued for the prosecution in the Scopes monkey trial. However, she couldn't shake the question. Questions came in her mind and she couldn't shake them. Questions like, why are the arguments for evolution so much more convincing than for young earth creationism? If God is so loving, how can so many be condemned to eternal punishment when they couldn't possibly have had a chance to say yes to the gospel message? Was Jesus' message about ensuring one's faith after death? In the future? Or about pursuing life in all its fullness now? And yes, she asked herself about whether gays or lesbians are outside the realm of God's love or not. And these questions came as the result of encountering real people in real life situations, like the lesbian she once met in her work as a journalist, the children she met in India at a mission school, people who were shunned from their communities in India because they had HIV/AIDS. These questions continued to plague her throughout her life, and so what she started doing is she started blogging about these questions. And these blog entries turned into books. Books like Searching for Sunday, The Year of Biblical Womanhood, and Faith Unraveled, which is a book that I just read recently. Faith Unraveled, which has the subtitle, How a Woman Who Had All the Answers Started to Learn How to Ask Questions. And she writes in Faith Unraveled, and I quote, I found people to be much more receptive to the gospel when they know becoming a Christian doesn't mean becoming a know-it-all. They're looking not for a religion to answer all their questions, but for a community of faith in which they can feel safe asking them. And she talks about herself, there are a lot of things I don't know. And yet slowly, I'm learning to love the questions. Learning to love, to live with, and to live the questions. Perhaps this is what will lead us beyond certitude and division into faith and diversity. The things that we need to hold on to as being essential these days, well, perhaps they need to become fewer and fewer. In fact, another book that I read recently by John Shelby Spong, he spoke to one particular bishop who said, you know, as I get older, I find that I have more belief, but fewer beliefs. We also need to be able to read the signs of the times in the same way that Jesus alludes to when he talks about reading the signs for the weather. And in reading those signs and in holding to only the essentials that we need to hold on to in this age, then we may be able to ask good questions rather than have to rely on ready-made answers. And it seems to me that's where the wisdom lies these days, in the ability of groups, of Christian groups, to be able to say, we don't have all the answers, so let's go searching for directions in which to follow. Just this week, I received a message from the Office of Formation and Life Development, what we call the OFLD, or Leadership Development, the OFLD, within our denomination, within MCC. And they sent out this survey because they've begun to realize how increasingly expensive it is for students who want to pursue ministry these days to go out and get themselves a theological degree. Usually the MDiv or the Bachelor of Theology has been the basic degree that you need, the Master of Divinity or the Bachelor of Theology, to become a minister in any denomination. And these days, just the cost of that education itself, depending on where you are in the United States or Canada, can be anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. Yep. And the opportunities, in spite of this, in spite of insisting on the MDiv or the BTH, the opportunities for full-time paid ministry in most Christian churches these days is decreasing, not increasing. And so they said in this survey, we realize these things, and we've got a proposal here. We want your feedback. And so they realize that they've come up with a proposal, yes, but they realize that this is just the first step. And with the ability to ask questions, there needs to be we need to be able to tolerate ambiguity a little bit more. To realize that there is a variety of beliefs and ideas and understandings of faith which need to coexist. In fact, our newest statement of faith for MCC, which was passed at last General Conference, which I hope will be the basis of a study group, which we'll be able to do sometime this fall, comes out and says quite explicitly, we know that we don't all believe the same things. It's willing to come out and say that plain and simple. And that's true enough for a denomination like MCC, because we are a combination of many different traditions. You consider we have everyone within MCC from former Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic all the way to former Mormons, former Pentecostals, of course, former Baptists. We have the whole rainbow. We have the whole rainbow. Not only the sexuality rainbow, but also the religious rainbow within MCC. So it goes without saying that we have to accept the fact that we don't all believe the same things. However, the surest expression of our faith is in the open table that we practice whenever we celebrate Holy Communion, the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper together. And in our conviction that the priesthood of Jesus the Christ extends to all believers, and that everyone who wishes to be part of the way of faith as we express it within MCC, everyone who answers that call has a role, has a place, has a ministry. So perhaps these are some ways which we can employ, ways that we can use to cling less to being certain about everything, to having answers, to knowing everything, to go away from that and to go more in the way of diversity. of being willing to live with questions, to realize that it's not having the answers right away that's the most important thing, but it's in the journey of exploring those questions that we will find faith and life in all its ways. Amen.
Apologies for the slight delay between audio and video. We hope you didn't find it too distracting. It's much better live. Speaking of which, we hope you won't just watch, but also participate in our Life as a Faith community. All are welcome to join us in our worship and our ministry. Age, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, ethnicity, ability, and economic status are not barriers to participation. This is what we mean when we say radically inclusive. We worship at 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings in the Haebangchon district in Seoul. For more information about us, our location, and our ministry activities, please check our website at www.opendooorskorea.org. We hope to see you soon.